Before the break, I asked how much did the federal government collect in taxes last year? 1.6 trillion, 3.2 trillion, 3.9 trillion, or 4.5. The answer is $3.2 trillion. That's a staggering amount of money and a record. It's obviously way too much, which is why the White House is making an aggressive push to pass tax reform this fall. Unfortunately, Republican leaders in Congress are facing big hurdles that could delay a key part of the Trump agenda until 2018. Now, for one, the current budget expires at the end of September, and if Congress doesn't approve new funding, we're looking at a partial government shutdown. Thanks, Ted Cruz. Then there's the debt ceiling, which the Treasury Department says must be raised by September 29th to ensure that the government keeps paying its bills. The Senate and House will only be in session for a total of 12 days between now and the debt ceiling deadline, which doesn't allow much time for talking on tax reform. So what should they do? Tackle this now or hit the delay button? Here with me, Tim Carney from the Washington Examiner. He's a commentary editor and American Enterprise Institute visiting fellow. So glad you're visiting New York.
I love it up here.
So tax reform is so necessary. We need tax cuts, we need tax reform, we need to reform the code, but it has become the latest divisive issue. Are we really not going to see anything till 2018?
Well, those things you mentioned, the government funding and the debt ceiling, will get in the way. But I think the bigger thing that's going to get in the way is the swamp, as Donald Trump puts it. Every industry has a massive number of lobbyists who are made up of the former staffers, guys who used to write the tax law for the Ways and Means Committee or used to implement it at Treasury. So every industry has all these guys who are going to say, we love tax reform, but you can't get rid of our
And there are a lot of, it's like a Sir Mix-a-Lot video. There are a lot of big butts.
Yes.
And unfortunately, they are the lobbying issues, the hurdles that are nearly impossible to overcome because that campaign money is so sweet.
Well, and also Republicans tend to confuse sort of limited government, free market. They think that means the same as pro-business.
Yeah.
So some industry lobbyist shows up and says, oh, we're so glad you're doing this. We love cutting the government, et cetera. But you have to keep our special tax credit for NASCAR stadiums.
Yeah.
Or you have to keep the home mortgage deduction, which, of course, gets pitched as a deduction for middle-class families. It's mostly a subsidy for home builders and realtors. All these little things stick in there. I think that's the biggest thing that's going to derail these guys, and especially as you were saying, the debt limit and the spending.
Yeah.
It's amazing. If Republicans who control the government can't get this through while they control House, Senate, and White House, I mean, this confirms what Democrats have been saying, which is Republicans are unfit to govern.
No, but we have to go back to an economically conservative ideology, which is all about cost cutting, because what you're describing is a statist creep. And that's what happens below the surface when no one's watching and government gets bigger and more powerful, especially when it's arm in arm with giant corporations.
Yeah, and if I'm going to say make the best, strongest case for tax reform, it's that the lower the rate is, the less time companies will spend having to hire up these lobbyists and these lawyers to try to figure out how to find a loophole. So this is one reason why I think a lot of people on the left don't want tax reform, and why, frankly, on both sides in the swamp they don't want tax reform, is because they have more control. The more complexity and the higher the rates are, the more control they have. Lower rates, simpler, then business makes a decision based on what makes business sense. That's no good for Washington, D.C.
And you have, what follows that is less tax avoidance. And that's another thing that drives liberals crazy, and that's another reason that if you lower the percentage that corporations and individuals are paying and you simplify the code, there will be fewer ways to avoid paying your taxes. Therefore, the government has more tax receipts. Everybody wins, but they can't because they're addicted to losing. Thank you so much, Tim Carney.
Thank you.
He is a winner in my book today and every day.